What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Drafts YouTube channel. I'm your host, Kevin Coleman, and we're back with Christian. We got a this or that. We're going Devy this or that, though. We love our college football. Where are you guys drafting these guys? And we're going to go the running back edition. We're going TreVeyon Henderson versus Raheim Sanders, two running backs that are kind of on weird trajectories. We have a couple of these guys are kind of going different ways in terms of value, where people have them ranked. But we're going to be diving into both these guys. So hit that like and subscribe button while the intro is going. And we're going to talk about on the other side who you should be drafting in your Devy leagues. All right, let's get into it. And hey, when we're looking at this and going through it, and we're talking about both these guys, we got big boys in the 24 running back class. We don't have the small guys like we had in the 23 class. We got some big boys going on here. TreVeyon Henderson, Raheim Sanders, and let's get into kind of where they're going in the ADP. So here at the Devy Drafts, we've been doing tons of mock drafts, especially Devy mocks, and our consensus ADP really has both of these guys. Raheim's going actually running back 1. So in a lot of mocks that we're seeing right now, Raheim's going at 106 running back 1. TreVeyon Henderson is going as running back 2, which is shocking to see based on what everybody expected him to going into last season as. I mean, he was going as a consensus running back 2 behind Bijan last year. Like, that's how high he was going. Raheim was probably that late second round pick. So you're seeing their ADP definitely change a little bit in terms of like where they're going this year and what we're looking at. Now, as far as college production, I'll talk about TreVeyon real quick, and then we'll throw it over to Christian. You know, his first year he came out, and that's why people were so excited about Henderson. 183 attempts, 1,200 yards. He had the 15 touchdowns on the ground. He was one of the most explosive players, not just in the Big Ten, in college football. Like, I believe one of the first plays, the touchdowns he had was like a screen pass. He took 70 yards to the house. I think it was against Minnesota. He just looked fantastic. 27 catches on the other hand. He's a 3-down guy. When he's healthy, he is a 3-down kid. Unfortunately, in 2022, he just had a lower leg injury that kind of knocked him out pretty much the entire year. Only 107 attempts, 571 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And he didn't really catch the ball. And that injury knocked him out pretty much and probably knocked Ohio State out of the national championship. They probably would have won that game against Georgia had he been there, but they just couldn't get him on the field. And so we've seen a different trajectory. You look at Sanders' stats, it's almost inverse. You're going to see like a different kind of a story here. And I think that's where we're looking at. So why don't we talk about Raheim a little bit, and then we'll jump into kind of their scouting.
Yeah, so as a freshman, Raheim, 578 yards, over 5 a carry, 5 touchdowns. Not much receiving work as a freshman, but was efficient with his receiving opportunities. As a sophomore in 2022, 222 attempts, over 1,400 yards, over 6 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns, and then he got involved in the receiving game. But it's important to remember, receptions, don't take them at face value. There are definitely different levels of receptions, and we'll get into that when we talk about Raheim's strengths and things like that. But overall, a really solid, first 2 years. I think you're happy with the 578 as a freshman. I think you're extremely happy with 1,400 yards as a sophomore as well.
And when you look at the stats, essentially what you got to think, they're pretty close. Both of these guys, based on what your profile is, like Sanders, if he can continue to do these numbers this year, then oh my gosh, we're like, okay, this is real. If Henderson can bounce back, both of these guys have the opportunity to push up their value and push up their draft capital. But we're going to go into the tape, kind of go over our scouting profile of both of these guys. We're going to start with Henderson, so I'll kind of jump up. For me, strengths, speed has been his strength since he's been in high school. He was one of the fastest guys I've seen on tape at his huddle tape. His freshman year, he was one of the fastest guys on the field. And even against Penn State this last year in that game, he had a run that you saw. He just popped through the line and he was gone. No one was touching him. And so I think the first thing that note for me from strength perspective on TreVeyon is his speed. The other one I highlighted in my notes over here is receiving. I think he is a receiving back, like a guy that can legitimately be a 3-down guy, receiving option in the NFL. Like when we're projecting these guys, for those of you that are watching this, like we're looking at, hey, how are they going to project to the next level? So when I'm looking at that profile, I'm like, hey, he can do this at the next level. That's going to bump him up in my rankings, especially for Devy. We don't care about college production. We're trying to guess where are these guys going to go in the NFL draft. And so for me, that's a big plus for me because that means he can catch an NFL. He can be a 3-down guy. And we have seen the NFL likes 3-down backs and they love catching backs. Look at Gibbs. Look at where he just went. So when we're looking at the NFL, that's something to project. And then I also noted lateral agility. I think he has very good lateral agility, especially at the line of scrimmage, and he pretty good vision, I think, in terms of where he's going. And those things all correlate with him. Weakness is, I think the first thing you got to know, and I hate using this as a weakness, durability. All my injury guys out there are mad at me, but I mean, he's got to stay durable. He's got to stay on the field. Like, he's got to be able, and again, running back, this is why the position has been devalued, but he's got to make sure that he stays on the field. Now, I know we've seen Bijan get hurt multiple times the last couple of years, but this last year he did not. He stayed on the field. So Henderson's got to do the same thing. Pass blocking was a big X in my notes for him. He doesn't do that at all. There's no there he does struggle there, but he doesn't get the opportunities really either. His freshman year was utilized to get the ball. That's kind of how that offense works. I don't think he has to do a bunch of pass blocking. So that's something to note. And then I did notice, like, between the tackles is something that he can shy away from contact a little bit. I think he has a good lateral agility, but I think he uses it too much. Like, he tries to just bounce from guys and do those type of things. So for me, the between the tackles thing is something to know. He's got to get a little bit stronger inside and not be worried about getting injured, and that durability there. Anything to add with Henderson?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about his elusiveness and his lateral agility and things like that, and it's really on display when he is out in the open field. He's a very, very difficult kid to tackle when he gets out in space. Now, I think you're right. I think we've seen some signs that he's gonna get stronger and he can take the ball and run between the tackles at a high rate. It's just, I think this sophomore year is really weighing on us a little bit, where we didn't really see a whole lot of that because he was definitely avoiding that this last year. So you'd like to see him get a little bit better with that this year, but overall, just a very talented player that we've been on. There was discussion about if he should be ranked with Bijan or ahead of Bijan at one point. I don't think we're there anymore, but I also think that there's a reason we were having those conversations.
I agree. Agreed. All right, let's go to the Raheim.
Yeah, so Raheim, in terms of strengths, just a massive, massive dude. Like, size is probably the number one strength of his. He's up over 220, and he doesn't sacrifice a ton of, speed or burst or things like that. Now, I guess long speed would be one of my questions about him, but the burst and the ability to get off chunk runs, 8, 9 yards, I think he's got that. Contact balance, fantastic. He plays to that size. Sometimes you see guys that are that size that still go down at first or second contact. I think Raheem's a really strong runner. In terms of where I think he can get better hands, I talked about don't take the receptions at face value. I think he can catch dump offs fairly well. I think that if you ask him to run a route down the field, TreVeyon would run laps around him in terms of those abilities. So I think they like to use him and they like to get the ball in his hands. But I think, he's best suited when we project at the NFL level. I think he's best suited as a first and second down back that runs between the tackles a whole lot. But I think he can be efficient in those areas as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with Raheim, like, overall, I marked my big X's was receiving, pass blocking, lateral agility. Those are my big ones. But my strengths, production, size, speed. Like, this dude's a load, man. If you saw his big ass coming out in the field, you're not wanting to you're not going to want to tackle this kid. Like, and I think he can be a 3-down like guy. The receiving, like you mentioned, has got to be a little bit like, it got to get a little bit better than just not routes. Dump him off, let him get the speed down the field, and let's let him go. Now let's talk. This would be fun because I think this is a lot closer than we think. You did on our College Football Guys show on Football Guys. You talked about this a little bit, so I think you have a good perspective. So where are you going?
Eileen Henderson here. We talk about what the upside is for Henderson for fantasy, and we're looking at a guy that can probably be a 40 to 50 ball catcher every year. You've got a guy that can be on the field on first and second down. That long speed, I know I always say it's the most overrated thing, and then I fall for guys that have it. TreVeyon's long speed is remarkable. I just did a video on this channel a couple weeks ago. Is TreVeyon Henderson the next Jonathan Taylor? Is that the level of back he is? I think so. I think if we see him healthy for another year, I think he could push for first round capital next year. And I think that he's got a very real shot to be the first running back off the board. On the other side of things, though, I do want to mention, we talked about, you just mentioned how you don't want to tackle Raheim when he's running. He reminds me a bit of Derrick Henry. And I know that's a lofty comp. But you look at what Henry's able to do. He's got no elusiveness either. He just runs through people. I think Raheim Sanders' upside is that he gets 20 some carries a game at the NFL level, and he can still be that RB1 for you, despite maybe not having the best receiving profile. If I'm making a bet, though, I'm still going to take the guy that I think can be an outstanding receiver as well as an efficient runner.
I got to take Henderson here. I've been a really big fan of Henderson going forward. I think people are forgetting about how good Henderson is. Like, I think that the 1 year, I mean, there was a really troll post that I saw this weekend about like who's the top 10 returning running backs, and Henderson wasn't on the top 10. Like, to me, that's just blasphemous because I feel like people forget Henderson is one of the best running backs when he's healthy on that field and in a high powered offense and in an offense that's going to need him. Like, McCord and Brown, whoever's the quarterback, I think they can lean on that rushing attack early. I've heard some stuff about Mayan Williams and all that stuff. If Mayan Williams was good, he would have declared. And I think Henderson is much, much better than that. I like Raheim. I do, but I can't slip off with Henderson's upside and say, no, I'm not taking him. I'm going to take him. I hope he slips into that first round draft capital. And I think that's where you're excited there. And based on ADP right now, I think Henderson's a buy. Like, if you're in Devy or some type of thing, and maybe you can go kind of sweeten that platform a little bit and go get him. And if you're in our Patreon, we have Devy Dynasty combined rankings where you can see maybe some NFL guys that you can kind of ship him for. I think he's a buy right now. You go take him and you get him there. So I'm going to lead Henderson as well. And to me, it's a tier. Really, like I think Henderson has a higher ceiling. I might be wrong. I know a lot of people like Sanders, but I'm a Henderson guy through and through.
Is Henderson your Devy RB1 still?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, same. And you can find all of that at the Patreon, patreon.com/Devy Royale. There's also a nice, fun Discord where we get to talk about these things, and there's a lot of fun people in there. So feel free to join.
Just not Jeff. We're trying to find Jeff. We can't find him. But we'll be back next time. Appreciate you guys. While the outro is going, hit that like and subscribe button. See you guys next time.